Okay, welcome back. Now going to continue my 32 and 32 with the San Francisco 49ers. For a team last year, I believe they over succeeded, but that's not really necessarily a bad thing. I think that coming into last season, that the Rams should have been favored to get that division. Uh, I would have had the 49ers as a wild card team, to be completely honest with you. Yes, they did make the playoffs the last, I think, 2 and 3 seasons, but I didn't think that they would be as dominant as they were. And considering they did it with three different quarterbacks, it's just astonishing. And then Brock Purdy, who was Mr. If I get this right, Mr. Irrelevant, because he was pretty much the last pick in the entire 2022 draft. He came up huge for the 49ers basically towards the end of the season because both Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo went down with season ending injuries. He was the main guy under center, and he ultimately led this team to a championship berth. He got hurt, and unfortunately, they were not able to recover. So the 49ers season did unfortunately come to an end before the Super Bowl, but I got to give props. Like I said, they overachieved. But going forward, I truly have a lot of faith in this team that they should compete again for a NFC West title, and they should be very competitive. Again, health wise and consistency and injuries aside, that they should make it back to another NFC championship. And hell, I'll even take it a step further. They could even be Super Bowl contenders. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, they're just that good of a team that they're hard to pass. So they finished last season at 13-4. They were the number 2 seed in the NFC. So therefore, they had home field advantage for the divisional champion for the wild card, the divisional round, and ultimately they had to play their championship game away against the Eagles, where they ultimately lost. So, like I said, they overachieved from my perspective, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I believe that they should be as good, if not better, this upcoming season. So when it came to the streaks, they were actually sitting at 3-4, which is hard to believe. And then they ultimately went on a massive run. They won their last 10 games in a row, which is absolutely unheard of. Just dominating, like I said, the last part of their season. They had 9 games at home and 8 games on the road, and they were very good at home. Just like the Cowboys and I believe the Vikings, they were both 8-1 at home. So it was hard for opponents to go into their home arena or field, stadium, I guess, and to get a W. So like I said, they finished 8-1 on the road, and then 8-1 at home, and then on the road they finished 5-3. So very good, very respectable record, and they were perfect against their division rivals, 6-0. Just absolutely dominated that NFC West. So, as always, I'll take a look at some of the stats for the players, go over additions and subtractions, and I guess they don't necessarily have to make any prediction, as I did say that they should be a favorite in the NFC to go at least to a championship berth, if not a NFC champion, or if not a Super Bowl berth, at least a championship berth. So, like I said, they had three different quarterbacks. They started with Trey Lance. He was in his third year. He only finished with 194 total yards, 15 completions out of 31 attempts, and one pick. Then they had Jimmy Garoppolo, who they've had for the past, I want to say, well, they acquired him in the 2017 season, so 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So for the past 6 seasons, he's been the main guy for for the 49ers. He finished with 2,437 yards, 207 completions. Oh, my goodness. I just realized I am totally out of focus. I apologize about that. Okay, so let's try this again. So Trey Lance did start the season last year, had 194 total yards, 15 completions, 31 attempts, and an interception. Once he went down, Jimmy G took over the starting role. He finished with 2,437 yards, 207 completions out of 308 attempts, 16 touchdowns compared to 4 interceptions. Very good, very respectable. And then, like I said, Brock Purdy finished the year 1,374 yards, 114 completions out of 170 attempts, 13 touchdowns to 4 picks. Very respectable for, like I said, for a guy who was Mr. Irrelevant and basically being a guy that was the last pick of the draft. So Christian McCaffrey was someone that they had acquired from the Carolina Panthers. He finished between the two teams, 244 attempts, 1,139 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Elijah Mitchell had 45 carries for 279 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jordan Mason had 43 carries for 258 yards and a touchdown. Deebo Samuel had 42 attempts for 232 yards and 3 scores. Tyrion Davis Price had 34 attempts for 99 yards. Ray McLeod III had 4 carries, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Trey Lance had 16 carries for 67 yards. Jimmy G had 23 carries for 33 yards and two scores. Kyle Juszczyk, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, had 7 carries, 26 yards, and a touchdown. Tevin Coleman had 12 carries for 26 yards and a score. Brandon Ayuk had 2 carries for 23 yards. Brock Purdy had 22 attempts for 13 yards and a touchdown. Danny Gray had 1 carry for 9 yards. And Josh Johnson had 2 carries for 3 yards. He was ultimately like the 4th-string quarterback who came into play once Brock Purdy went down in that NFC Championship game. And on the receiving aspect, Braden Ayuk had 78 catches for 1,015 yards. George Kittle, the reliable tight end, had 60 catches for 765 yards and 11 touchdowns. Absolutely mind-blowing. Christian McCaffrey, like I said, between Carolina and the 49ers, he finished with 85 catches for 741 yards and 5 touchdowns. Deebo Samuel had 56 catches for 632 yards and 2 scores. Juwan Jennings had 35 catches for 416 yards and a touchdown. Ray McLeod III had 14 catches for 243 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Juszczyk, again, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that totally correctly, had 19 catches for 200 yards and a touchdown for a fullback. That is absolutely astonishing. Ross Dwelly had 3 catches for 105 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Croft had 4 catches for 57 yards. Tevin Coleman had 3 catches for 44 yards and a touchdown. Danny Gray only had 1 catch for 10 yards. And Elijah Mitchell had 3 catches for 7 yards. So I'll just go back to the standings and I'll just go over the players that they've added and the players that have been subtracted from the team. So I'll just quickly adjust this, make sure it's not too terribly blurry. There. Okay. So they have acquired cornerback Isaiah Oliver, and he spent the last 5 years with the Atlanta Falcons. They have also acquired quarterback Sam Darnold, who spent the last 2 seasons with Carolina, and the other member is Javon Hargrave, a defensive tackle. I just had his picture here. I just got to double check and see where he played before. So he spent the last, 3 seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles. So obviously he's coming off a Super Bowl appearance, and he's gone from one Super Bowl contender to yet another. So I'm sure he'll be pleased to be a member of said 49ers. And then 3 key players that have left are Mike McKinley on the offensive tackle. He is now signed with the Denver Broncos. Jimmy Ward, a defensive back. He has now signed with the Houston Texans. And the biggest name, like I said, that they've lost is Jimmy Garoppolo. So essentially, they have Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold as your 1-2 punch. Trey Lance just recently got traded to the Dallas Cowboys. Jimmy G was traded to the Las Vegas Raiders. So he's now going to be the starter there. So there's a lot of pressure on Brock Purdy, but I believe he has it in him to take over that number 1 role, to be the number 1 guy, to play from week 1 to week 18, to be that solid of a quarterback. And as I said prior to everything else, I believe this team is strong enough to win the NFC West, and I truly believe there should be Super Bowl contenders, or at least make it to a championship game. That would not surprise me in the least. The 49ers are just built. I got to tell you, there's something between Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. They seem to know what the heck they're doing. and they have turned this franchise around for the better. As always, thank you very much for tuning in, and until next time, take care.